Back in the good old days before the pandemic, the Sony A7R III was the best camera that you could get from Sony, and one of the best 35mm cameras ever made. But since, Sony's released a number of other bodies, including the Sony A7R IV, and we may be on the precipice of a Sony A7R V. Does it still make sense to buy the Sony A7R III in 2022? Welcome back to Overexposed, your place for spicy camera reviews and bad picks. But let's take a look at some of the reasons why that you would choose the Sony A7R III. It's a little bit of backstory of how I came to own a Sony A7R III to begin with. My now business partner and I were using different camera brands. I was a Nikon guy, he was a Fuji guy, and we decided we would open up a photography business together, and we needed to pick one system to consolidate on. We both bought Sonys, and we've been off to the races ever since. I have the A7R III, he has the R4, and we both have Sony A7Cs to complement this with. And that's what I'm recording this video on today. We all knew that the A7R III slapped when it was released, but have there been any real technological advancements that would send us into nasty fits of gear acquisition syndrome? The direct and logical comparison for the Sony A7R III is its cousin, the A7R IV. When the A7R IV was released, Sony upped the megapixel count on the R4 to 61 megapixels, up from the 42.4 of the Sony A7R III. So with the A7R IV, you're getting a slight megapixel bump. And I think that's something that's worth talking about. I've been running a professional photography business for the past 3 years, and I think my business partner and I have delivered between 13 and 14,000 images. And not a single one of our clients has ever remarked, "Man, I wish we had a few more megapixels," or "Man, I wish the image quality was a little higher." Granted, we're doing wedding photography, some sports photography, family photography, just general kind of purpose photography. And perhaps if we were doing more commercial type photography, megapixels would be more important. 42 megapixels has been more than enough to satisfy my customers. And I'm sure if your photography needs are similar to mine, it's gonna be good enough for you as well. Take a look at the image quality that I've got out of my Sony A7R III. I don't think it leaves anything to be desired on the image quality front. As for some of the other specs, Sony did make some focusing improvements with the A7R IV. So if you find yourself shooting more sports-oriented photography, you could find benefit from the additional focus points and the faster autofocusing speed of the R4. But in my experience, as someone who has shot quite a bit of sports, the A7R III does just fine on that front. Sony really took the focusing system up a step from the Sony A7R II, and the R3 focuses lightning quick. So maybe you see a benefit for the additional focusing speed of the R4, but for my use, the R3 has been just fine. One of my favorite improvements that the A7R III brought, and this applies to the R4 as well, is the additional battery capacity. Sony changed the battery coming from the A7R II to the A7R III and increased the capacity by a ton. And that has been such a welcome change. I had a cup of coffee with the Sony A7R II many years ago and quickly discovered that it was not going to be a valid option for me just because of the battery life. I remember getting 200, 250 shots. I've routinely got upwards of 1,000 on the Sony A7R III. So the battery life on these cameras are great. And the Sony A7R III was the first camera in Sony's range that got the additional battery capacity. So that's something that's amazing. With the Sony A7R III, you're going to have plenty of battery capacity. You're not going to be changing batteries all the time. And that's just a welcome improvement. And like I said, the A7R IV has the higher capacity battery as well. The Sony A7R III is weatherproof. The R4 is weatherproof as well, but you are getting really nice weather sealing technology with the A7R III, so you're gonna have the ability to shoot your camera in all conditions. Now, I'm gonna admit something to you on this channel. I'm not an EVF snob, okay? I don't know if it's my bad eyes or what it is, but I really struggle to tell the difference between one EVF to the next. I know Sony increased the EVF quality on the A7R IV, but anytime I've shot my business partner's R4, I haven't even noticed, to be completely honest with you. So for me, the Sony A7R III EVF is plenty good enough for me. Maybe that's something you'll see value in, is the enhanced EVF quality of the R4, but for my part, the EVF is great. The video modes. The video modes between the Sony A7R III and A7R IV are virtually identical. And this is basically, and if you're a video maker, this is gonna be a threshold question for you. So take a look at the video specs of the Sony A7R III to make sure it measures up. It does all of the baby 4K modes, 24, 30. These video specs have long since been passed by other models in Sony's range, so if you're looking for additional video performance, that may be something you're interested in. And it's also worth noting that 4K on the R3 has a slot crop. So that is something that could be problematic if you're not prepared for it and compensate. But your miles may vary on that front. I'm speaking specifically to photography business owners here. One of the most important considerations in your mind when you're running a business is the cost of your equipment. And the Sony A7R III, being that it was released back in 2017, is an older model at this point. A quick eBay search tells me that you can get a Sony A7R III for $1,500 or $1,600. That's roughly half price a Sony A7R IV is going for. When you're running a new business, $1,500 is a lot of money that you can use on other things. You know, that pays rent for a month or two, or that pays some of your bill. $1,500 is a consequential amount. It's something that you should consider, especially thinking about what I told you earlier in the review. Nearly all photography clients are gonna be more than satisfied with the image quality that comes out of a Sony A7R III. So it might be in your best interest as a new business owner to go the cheaper route, buy the more inexpensive camera, and use the additional money saved on something else. So that is something to consider. To me, that's the strongest argument in favor of the Sony A7R III, is that it contains a lot of the important specs from the Sony A7R IV at a vastly significant price. And I guess this video could also be titled describing diminishing returns, right? You're getting 5 to 10% more performance with the Sony A7R IV for nearly double the price. I just think that right now the Sony A7R III sits at a really sweet spot in terms of price to performance ratio. So in the year of our Lord 2022, if you're in the market for a full frame 35mm mirrorless camera, I think the Sony A7R III is as good as any option on the market, especially if you're considering price. I think you're going to get all the specs that you want, all the image quality that you need, and be able to save a little money on the side. Answer the question, yes, you should consider buying the Sony A7R III in 2022. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give the video a like and a thumbs up. Until next time, we'll see you.